Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Snyder, and thank you to everyone who is listening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. So, a little about myself. I'm an Air Force veteran and also a registered dietitian. Earlier this year, I kind of did some self reflection and decided to make a career change. So, what I did was I kind of thought about the things that I really enjoy and I'm really good at. In high school, I was one of those individuals that loved math and putting the formulas together. Also, I'm really big when it comes to organization and attention to detail, and I'm very artistic. The drawing on the bottom right is actually a drawing that I did for my sister. So I kind of want to combine all that into data science and visualization. So for my capstone, the question I focused on is, what is society's opinion towards women who choose not to have children? And is there a correlation between age, gender, race, ethnicity, and occupation? So a little background about why I chose this. So I feel like I live a very fulfilled life. I love being an aunt and a cat mom. I knew from a very young age that I didn't want to have children. However, society has always had opinions towards that, telling me like I'll change my mind, you'll regret it, you're selfish for choosing this. Um, my cat Whiskey is not a fan of those comments because he loves being a very spoiled kitty. So some challenges that I ran into along the way when doing this is there's very limited data out there on women who choose not to have children. It's mostly on parents and children. Also the data that some of the data that I did find, there was missing information, like unidentifiable column names. There was one data set I found that seemed really great. I had communicated a lot back and forth with the researchers, but in the end, it ended up not working out. So the study that I did find after the nulls were removed, it was left 122 participants. So not a huge data set. Um, and then the picture that I chose to the right, I wanted to give you a breakdown. Most individuals who choose not to have children, they just don't have the desire, and I fall in that category. But there are other reasons like medical and financial, which actually ties into the data set that I chose. So for my data set, it was a study done by graduate researchers from Rider University in New Jersey. I had to get creative in my searches, so I ended up finding it through a title called Survey on Maternity through Kaggle. And it was 30 questions asked to participants, and only one was subjective. The rest used a Likert scale from 5 being strongly agree and 1 being strongly disagree. And I used a traffic light colors to symbolize for green agree and then red disagree. And then neutral is yellow. So with my data, I ended up creating 2 different CSV files. One with the Likert scale, I turned it into string values and changed one to strongly disagree and so on. And then the other one I kept as numerical values. The data set, when I did download it, some of them showed as floats and integers, but it didn't affect my data set, so I just left as is, but I did change the column names to separate it from the string value data. Next, I wanted to get a feel for my data and what I was working with and the demographics. So I first sorted it by age to see the age ranges of the participants. I also wanted to see under like gender and employment, just what people had selected and what was inputted. So it was only male and female for employment status. It gave me whether they're like a student, employed, unemployed. And I also did that for race, ethnicity, and also relationship status. Then for question number 7, that was the only subjective question. And a lot of people, about half, decided to opt out and just not answer that one. And I didn't want that removed when I removed the nulls. So what I did was all the ones that were blank, I just filled it in with the word blank. So then from there, I dropped the nulls. So that was any participants who um, decided not to answer a bunch of the questions, and there was only 4 participants that had been dropped when I dropped the nulls. Next, I wanted to verify that question 11, that a bunch of people, that those responses weren't dropped because a lot of people, I guess, had opted to not even answer that question. And so a 0.0 was put in its place, and they were not dropped when I dropped the nulls. Next, what I did was I converted 1 to strongly disagree and so on for the string values for the Likert scale. And then I printed it out just to make sure everything looked okay. Everything looked good. So then from there, I transferred it into Tableau. So in Tableau, um, you can see here the averages. And I did calculate the averages first in Python, so I had a feel for what I was working with prior to doing this in Tableau. For time's sake, I didn't include that in here. But the 30 questions, it was split into 4 categories. The first one was financial related questions. It was pretty average, neutral, how people felt about those questions in regards to individual being child-free. And then the next one was health-related questions. A lot of people disagreed on that one, which I can understand why they did. For example, one of the questions had asked, a middle-aged woman, 35 plus years old, who does not have a child is probably infertile. Next one was outside influences, why someone may choose not to have a child for outside influences. That was pretty average. Once I did the average mean for all of these, it came to 3.1. That was a screen snip of a Python calculation I had done. And then the last one was personal choice related questions. And that had some good variation with people either like strongly agreeing or strongly disagreeing to the questions. So I thought I would dive into that one for the remaining of my study. So here's a close up of it. So for number 8, it said it is perfectly reasonable for a woman to choose not to have a child, and a bunch of people strongly agreed with that one. Next one, a bunch of people agreed with if a woman chooses not to have a child, society automatically has a negative perception of her. Next, a bunch of people strongly disagreed to if a woman chooses not to have a child, she's making a poor decision. And then number 11, that was the one where a lot of people had either put 0. It didn't show that as an option, so the researchers might have had just put in 0 if these people didn't decide not to answer it. But it's if a woman decides not to have a child, she is viewed the same as a man who chooses not to have a child. And then the last one is a woman who chooses not to have a child is selfish. And a bunch of people strongly agreed with that one, which was very interesting because they also strongly agreed, saying it's perfectly reasonable for a woman to choose not to have a child. And because both statements are polar opposites, but both people strongly agreed, I wanted to see if there was a difference in regards to age, race, ethnicity, gender, and employment status. So for gender, on the left-hand side, it's question 8 for it being perfectly reasonable for a woman to choose not to have a child. And then on the right side, um, it's stating that a woman is selfish. So in the study, there was 108 females and then 14 males. But as you can see, they're quite similar. They almost look exactly the same. So there's no correlation that stood out. For example, 70% of women strongly agreed to this statement. And then 68% of women strongly agreed. And like 50-50, 27-26. It's quite similar. So no correlation there. So for age and ethnicity, I wanted to first give you guys a comparison before I went into that one, just to show you that it was mostly African Americans that participated in the study, as well as Caucasian and white. The greatest age range, especially for African American, was between 16 to about 48 years old. And then for Caucasian and white, most of them were between the ages of 16 and 19. And then as you can see, the other ethnicities, not many had participated. And then beyond 48 years old, not as many had participated in the study. So for age correlation, in regards to both statements, again, it's quite similar, both charts. The dark green, above 50%, similar to right here on this side. And then the lighter green for agree, it's between about 15% to a little over 40%. And then same again. And then there's a couple like disagrees in there. So no correlation. And then next is race and ethnicity. And the bar chart that I chose to do it based on the, so for example, African American, there is a greater amount that participated. So the bar chart is a lot higher. And then next up, it was Caucasian white. Um, so as you can see, the greater amount of participants based on the ethnicity, the a little bit of more variation in the responses, like there are some disagrees in there, and then some neutral responses. Um, and then again, both look very similar in the responses, whether they strongly agree or disagree. And then last is employment correlation. And what I did was I organized it based on the greater amount of participants. So there's a greater amount of employed. And then next up, it was a great amount of students who had participated, then self-employed, currently unemployed, and homemaker. And again, there isn't much difference between both graphs. They're very similar in their responses, with strongly agree being higher up than agree. Uh, there are, though, a couple of disagrees in here, and that a woman is selfish with the employed and student. Um, so, in conclusion, there's not really any correlation that I found between gender, age, race, ethnicity, or employment status. It was interesting, the participants' responses, the fact that both statements were so different. So I'd love to see further research on it and expanded on why they said that they're selfish, but they also believe it's reasonable. Also to see what the older generation thinks as well, kind of a bigger age gap, and then even further studies out there on people who choose not to have children, like throughout the generations and things like that. That'd be really cool to see. Um, so thank you to everyone for listening in. I also wanted to give you a big thank you to Savvy Coder staff, my classmates and teammates, especially being so supportive and encouraging with this topic. I was really nervous about choosing this topic. Everyone was so great. Also, a special thank you to my teammates for the daily stand-ups for Agile and always working with me and walking me through with um, problems that may have come up with my capstone. And again, thank you again. Bye.